Welcome to Explore, Explain, Highlights. In this Highlights package, we'll be looking at Season 4, Episode 1, with our guest, Neil Richards, discussing the project Questions in Dataviz.
But much of what's in the book focuses on what I love to do with data visualization, mainly in personal creative projects. So that's probably what I'm sort of more well known for. I do a lot of my work in Tableau, and I've been lucky enough to be a Tableau visionary and a Tableau Zen master a few times. And yeah, that's it really. I consider myself a data visualization enthusiast and a fan and a hobbyist and all these kind of things. So the book is all about what I love doing.
You talked in a really lovely blog post that you wrote about some of the kind of rationale behind doing the book, and you mentioned your late uncle. Could you just sort of elaborate a bit on that that context and the sort of motivation for just committing to this huge piece of work?
Well, yeah, I think in my case, we talk about labels, and in my case, I'm a mathematician, or I did a maths degree. So I was the only, we're the only cohort of people who go through without having to do essays, without having to prove yourselves creatively or writing in any kind of way. So anything that I've done since in data visualization, I felt it's being creative for the first time. So that's why I'm quite excited about this whole journey I've been on. It's been like a new start. And similarly, I've found that I enjoy writing. I enjoyed the blog posts about it. I mean, some of them would take me a long time to write, and some of them I would just, write quickly. But I did it. A lot of these things are new challenges to me. And you mentioned the blog post about my uncle, and he was. There's obviously perhaps more similarities with him than I realized, because he was a retired mathematician and professor as well, and yet he loved to write. He loved to. He had a whole library of books that he'd written that I wasn't really aware of until later in his life, and he got a lot of pleasure from just from the writing process and from the number of people that he could reach and help make his particular topic more accessible. So all these things sort of came together really. I didn't particularly see it as a big project. A lot of these things I just didn't know, because I don't consider myself an author. I consider myself a data visualization guy who's got a chance to write a book. I went in not knowing if it would be easy, not knowing if it would be hard, not knowing if it would feel large or small or anything like that. I just thought, right, let's do this.
Could you just speak to the sort of the basic premise of the book and the proposition? What's somebody reading the book going to kind of get from it, really?
Well, I mean, they say write about what you know, and so the book is very much based on my own experiences and some of the thoughts and ideas that I've had, and so it's aimed for people a bit like me. So people have done a bit of data visualization, who've got a really good grounding, perhaps of the basics of what they should do, and perhaps they use a BI tool at work and can do some nice stuff. But people who perhaps are involved in the community or online or study or buy loads of books and think, I wonder if I could do stuff a bit like Georgia, or a bit like Sonia, or a bit like Nicholas Rouget, or a bit. The more people I mention, the more people I'm leaving out.
That's right.
If you study this and you take inspiration from others and think, well, I'm just a guy at work using this particular piece of software. Could I do that? What were they thinking when they did that? Is there a bridge for me to be able to do it?
But you are talking there, sorry to interrupt you, but you are talking there about people who would be characteristically seen as quite experimental, quite creative, quite pushing the boundaries of how you represent data, beyond the classic charts that we would use in business. So I get that you'd want to maybe appeal to people who want to go to the next level of creativity.
That's right, and it's for every person who appreciates that kind of way of thinking, there are probably several more that don't, and that that really would pride themselves on best principles and delivering great business dashboards. In terms of write about what you know, that's it. It helped me really sort of document all the different thought processes I had, thinking, well, they say you shouldn't do that, but what if I do? Or thinking, well, some of these people who I want to emulate, they do that, or some of these ideas or perhaps images that I want to take inspiration from, that breaks a few rules. But wouldn't it be quite cool to do that? Wouldn't it be good? I'd love to be able to do something a bit like I see in some of the coffee table data visualization books that got me into the field in the first place.
Yeah.
What do I need to do in order to sort of break out of the mold of this should be a bar chart and take that thought and some of those practical applications to the next level. And so that's what I'd always done on the sort of blog posts I wrote. The idea of making each one a question, I don't really know how that came about, but I think I realized it kind of worked quite nicely, and then I stuck to it, and I'm really glad that I did, because it always gave me a different angle in order to which to present a new idea that I had, and why did I do this, or what decisions might you have had to have made in order to to come to this decision and do something a little less conventional. Because of the pre-existence of the blog post, it was perhaps simpler than it had a right to be. I basically sort of went through each and decided which I thought were useful and had good content that I could expand on, and which didn't. And then it was almost a case of, right, that goes in the first section, that goes in the second section, that goes in the third, and sort of, I don't think I physically did it, but it's sort of almost having these on cards and sort of shuffling them, thinking, I think that works, and let's order them in this direction. There were a few gaps. There was, I wanted to write a little bit more of my own content, I think, particularly in the middle, I think, to kind of draw it on. And I think there was probably more pruning in the final section, because the final section was all sorts of a sort of mishmash of things that I could include. Yeah, exactly. So I sort of trimmed that down a little bit. But I think that, I suppose the thing with my blog posts is that the very nature of them is that they're bite-sized. You read them start to finish, but you don't read them in conjunction with anything else. You read them if you find them, or when they're released. Yeah, something standalone. So it was really, I suppose it was just sort of trying to find a narrative, putting them in sections like that sort of allowed me to make a narrative. So they're very much not chronological.
Yeah.
I mean, they are a bit, probably most of the first section came from earlier blog posts, but it's not the same chronology as the blog, but it did, having these sort of bite-sized elements of things to talk to did really help with that.
Sorry, I was going to say, it feels like it's almost like an anthology of like a collection of essays, of writings, and I guess that helps people to just be able to dip into one section without having to have read all the previous sections for that to make sense.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a kind of book that you can just sort of look into for inspiration, or just sort of for as you say, a chapter at a time. And you don't necessarily have to have read the chapters before it, or go on to the chapters after it. I mean, you might find that perhaps for more experienced readers, they might not feel they need to look too deeply into the first section.
Yeah,
stuff that's sort of quite familiar to them. But yeah, I'm certainly pleased with the way it was able to flow through that, and that's sort of some of the nice feedback that I've had, is that they like the way that I structured it in that way, and that to me, because a lot of the content is semi pre-written, that to me was the major sort of editorial decision I made in writing the book, and so that's been really nice validation in that sense.
But the other visual aspect of this is the cover, designed by Ali Torban. It's a brilliant cover. How did that come about? How did you end up commissioning Ali for that? And were there any
Well,
bits of guidance that you gave, or did she just sort of pick up the brief from the title and go with it?
well, no, it's to answer your question. Yes, there was a bit of guidance that I gave, and a very small bit. I contacted Ali. It never occurred to me to contact anyone else. I knew that she would be a brilliant data visualization cover designer. I said, and when we first got in touch, he said, "Oh, is that because I'm doing the image for Jen Christensen's book as well?" And I thought, I don't think so. Had I subconsciously seen that or what? I don't know. But I already knew, because of the sort of crossover work that she does between design and data visualization, that she was a great person to talk to. And I commissioned Ali, and I said, well, I want it to look like something that I would have thought of or kind of done. And I was really vague, and I thought, I'm being a nightmare client here, am I not? But she went away and looked at my stuff and came up with color palettes and mood boards and Pinterest things, and my eyes were open. I thought, wow, I've given you almost nothing, and you've shown me some amazing stuff here, and we got some ideas. And a couple of days later, said, well, this is my first thought. What do you think? And I said, start. That's it. We're having it. That's wonderful. The image that we've seen, I think we maybe tweaked a color or two, and that was pretty much it. And in fact, because she mocked it up, and I think it's the same mock-up that you've used with this explain image, mocked it up as someone having the book and perhaps with a nice little cup of coffee and relaxing on a desk. When I knew that was the image, I was so excited at that point, because it came at the point when things had gone quiet. They were taking a long time editing. I didn't know when it was going to come out. The excitement from seeing the brand, if you like, of the book, the image associated with it, and the sort of the wonderful emerging question mark that Ali came up with, I was definitely a high point of the process.
And to your point before, you're probably still thinking of this Microsoft document, and now you can see this physical manifestation being mocked up in real life. Yeah,
exactly. That was a huge jump in reality, or in visualizing the stage of it, and it just made me think, wow, it's happening.
Sort of reflections in general. How do you reflect on what was the most difficult part of this process?
I think the difficult part, I think the hardest part to write was the preface and the introduction, because it was brand new writing for me, and I almost didn't know what to do. I thought, what do I include? And I wrote and rewrote that more times than I did anything else. And you've got this sort of idea that, oh, this might be the bit that people see for free on Amazon. This might be the bit that's going to drive people to or from your book. And I felt more responsibility for those than I did any of the content. The content, I knew what it was going to be, and I thought there's going to be plenty of people who don't like it, but they're not the people I'm targeting the book at. People who know me will know roughly what it's going to be like. But I did find the introduction and the preface much more difficult, because that feels like almost a different skill. That's a skill of drawing people in and summarizing what you want to put and why you want people to buy the book and read it, I guess. Yeah.
Thank you for joining us for this Explore, Explain highlights episode. As always, the full episode is available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. We hope to see you again soon on another episode of Explore, Explain.